Meeting over. I'd like to open up the meeting for the joint meeting with the town and village planning boards of New Paltz. First of all, thank you all for coming. We know this is our Monday night meeting, and you went out of your way to come here, so I do appreciate it from the town point of view. Continue this thing. It's your turn to host next time.
Sure.
And Maurice and I kept the lawyers out and the engineers out. This is just really a discussion period, just to informally go over some of the areas that we could work jointly in, some of the ideas that are coming in the village that have implications for the town. Maurice and I have been kicking around the B3 and the 32 North. We have some commercial development on that. How do we blend in what we're looking at to what fits in with what you've got done in that area? What's the suggestions you have for us? What kind of issues you had with zoning and what's allowed and not allowed in it? There are other areas that we think we can talk about and see where we want to go on it. But it's open. I see we'll have a good set of notes, what the heck we were talking about, labeled up on it. But it's just an opportunity to get together around. Just to go around, Liz, you want to start introductions?
Yeah, my name's Liz Harshaw. I'm on the village planning.
I'm Rich Steffens, Village.
Tom Powers, town.
Amy Cohen, Town Planning Board.
Del Ruger, Town.
Augusta Yearwood, Town.
Michael Sealer, Village.
Maurice Whiteman, Village.
Mike Calamano for the town.
Lyle Mullen for the town.
Peter Muller, town.
Okay. There's nothing structured here at all that. Maurice and I was just trying to work on some topics that we could talk about, that we thought we had some commonality on it. Where do we go from here, and what are the things that we could do jointly or together? So it's really a workshop that's fully a workshop. First up, the thing we had in common is North Chestnut Street development there. I just wanted, and you've recently adopted zoning for it, so I guess for our questions is what do you see as development on, and what are the issues that came up with when you were looking at 32 North, if you had it? I did circulate, Maurice did send me the report, basically that dealt with it, but a couple of interesting points, and I'll just start off with it, that I gleaned out of it, that we had some of the same issues here, was the moving or changing your minimum front yard setback from 25 feet to 15 feet, actually moving it in closer to the street.
Keep the cars in there.
And so, how'd that go over? I mean, we've dealt with that. We have a front yard setback that, kind of allows parking in the front if you get it far enough, if you have definitely your property far enough back. But we've looked at the idea of, moving towards a more pedestrian on a town side of it. And one of the things is moving the buildings forward. What was your feelings? Is it basically to move it up and to get parking in the back? Or
Well, Michael was more involved in it than I joined something like 2009 or so. I don't remember when this was enacted.
This is
maybe
2007, I'd say?
Yeah.
Or- yeah.
That's what the report was written.
I will let him tell what he remembers, but
Yeah.
from my perspective, the idea was to have businesses downstairs, residents upstairs, parking in the back, everything close to the street so that when you drive by you see what's there, you don't see cars. And that's what I remember as the visual guideline.
Right,
But
it's
it's
been-
probably more.
Yeah, I mean, the idea was to, since 32 is already a significant thoroughfare, and it's fairly wide, but traffic speeds are pretty high, even regardless of speed limits, traffic speeds are still pretty high. The idea was to, and since it's one of the entrances into the village, the idea was to make it a gateway, which is part of the name now, and to take advantage of the existing infrastructure, but make it more pedestrian and bicycle friendly. And by doing that, bringing everything closer more the way Main Streets typically are, provide street trees and landscaping, sidewalks, and all of that, and have it so that with the buildings close to the street, people, if they're walking, will be more inclined to go into buildings and so forth, as opposed to the sort of the aesthetic sense you get when commercial buildings are set far back. So that was the general idea, and then, but acknowledging that it's already a business use that's ongoing, it's a highway business which is very useful. The idea was to sort of take a long-term view and put these design guidelines into place in such a way that over time, if parcels are going to get developed, they'll get developed more along this way. Parking in the rear, businesses up close, as Maurice said, mixed use buildings, higher density, storefronts on the bottom, offices and residential on top.
I think that's a great idea for the entire town. I mean, that's what we're trying to do with CVS too, make them put parking in the back.
Yeah, what happened with that?
Well, some stuff happened.
Basically, CVS moved their parking lot further back into the property. So we have a front yard setback 65 feet and don't allow parking in that section.
Okay.
So if you move the whole facility back further, you can eliminate the parking in the 65 feet. So CVS will sit further back on the site
Mm-hmm.
and not encroach on that 65
And
foot.
there won't be parking in
But there will be parking
There's still parking.
in the front of the building,
Between the building and
Yeah.
There's
65
like
feet.
some,
and between the building and the 65 feet.
yeah.
some.
Okay.
I mean, this is not set.
And the other-
So I just want to disclose, I own some property on the 32 North Village corridor. So it's helpful in that, to this discussion maybe, because I was part of that original discussion. There are some problems that the village has in that some of those lots are not that large, and the west side has no village water and sewer. So even though it's in the village, the west side past Mulberry Street, there is no village and water and sewer on the west side.
Oh,
The eastern side is very little there that can get developed. You know, you have the Stewarts and, you know, everything's pretty much built up that can be built up on the side that has water and sewer. So those are challenges for property owners at this point, because the lots are a little smaller than they would be as they extend out towards the town, number one. And now the village has been trying to present a new wetlands law that would further hinder development of the western side of the Route 32 North corridor. I mean, there already is a, you know, DC wetlands map, but that would hinder that. And the people on Huguenot Street that also don't have sewer, which is on the other side of, you know, tributary 13. So, I mean, it's a little bit of a problem and an issue, and I hope that that gets worked out, but it's going to be very difficult for people to develop that without the village coming up with ways to make it easier, with a plan for water and sewer, and, you know, and hopefully, you know, using the wetlands map that is currently in use by the DEC wetlands. So I think that would be the easiest way. But there are issues. There are a lot of issues.
Where exactly are wetlands?
You know, that's an interesting question. The last wetlands map that was presented to the village board was one that Jason West
Yeah.
Drew. Right, I think I saw you at that meeting. He took a wetlands map from Hudsonia and drew new wetlands and presented that. So that was rejected, thank goodness, by the village board, so I don't really know what's coming. But we should look out for it, I think. I think it's, it could be an issue with.
What about connectivity of sidewalks on the west side? Is that happening or?
Yeah, I don't see that happening right now, but, I think they should deal with village water and sewer before they start with sidewalks, right? That would be great. It would be great to have sidewalks all the way out to the end of the village. Why not?
I think you have to take it piecemeal. You may get an application for the west side, like we could get an application right across the border for development. And we've had applications going up 32 for commercial. Some of them are challenging to begin with, like you said, because the road, it's residential, our residential zone cuts this property in half, makes the business zone very small. So the lots are half in and half out when you go further north of them. But if you dig up a couple of lots, that were applicable, it might be easier to have them have the facilities put in for sidewalks, knowing that, the idea is eventually you'll connect them. But water and sewer is a major undertaking. And you say you won't pick up water and sewer on an individual site until the town or village do something to accommodate that.
Which they should do, because it is the village. The village is supposed to have village water and sewer.
It's not the village planning board that's going to give you water and sewer. Straight away from parking a little bit, and I'd like to get back to that for a second. One of the big reasons to have parking at the rear is it makes it easier to share parking. It's at the rear of the building. Makes it a lot, we can increase the amount of parking by sharing parking. So it's not just the aesthetics of how it looks from the road, but it's also increases the property usage by having it be able to be shared. So that's one of the other reasons to look at parking in the rear. Flat top deserts are not pretty. So back behind the building where the loading and the dumpsters and everything else should be is a good place to park cars. But it also makes it much easier to, like I say, share the service roads through the back.
Yeah, it's just generally businesses have trouble with, like I said, the back lot is where the garbage trucks are, where the loading docks are, and making an entrance or having people park in the back, but having capability to get to the front of the building to where the entrance normally would be on it. One of the things we had issues on project is anytime we've looked at it and they've come in with the box, everything in the back is to supply the store. It's not something that you would walk in and into the back of the store with. So we've always had trouble with them trying to convince them to do parking in the back because storefront, it's way out front. And I always had this dream when I wasn't on board then, but when whoever was in there, when Ames went bankrupt, and they came in to redo the mall there, there was an opportunity to move the building up and put the parking in the back, but we fell back into the same footprint that existed there. I look at where the fire was, and I look at that lot, and it's a great lot there, right on the street, but it gets back to the depth of the lot, whether you can put how big a building and how big a parking you could get in the back or anywhere on that site. But theoretically, you could let them use the community lot across from sewage, part of parking. But these are the things. What I was getting at, or at least from the town point of view, was where the sidewalk ends at Agway, where do we go from there? And what's meaningful for us, because just north of Posey's is when we had I was up a little further, we had the applications.
Yeah.
Remember those, he wanted to put,
Cousin Shop.
warehouse, garage, whatever it was. And, it was a narrow lot, and it was difficult to find parking on it. Just getting back to the same questions, the lot sizes don't give you a lot of flexibility on what to do when someone comes in and designs that. We wrestled with that one, that coming in the front, coming in the back, and, because it touched on the 32 and, what's the road in the back, Stan? I can't think of it.
Old Kingston.
Old Kingston Road, right. We have a whole strip. And we have commercial all the way up, if you look at it. I can go up to Paltz, and the gas, and Candelosi's, that whole strip of area. That's all commercial now. Being commercial, we only have one zone. Everything applies to that. So we were looking at, how do I make that fit in with what you're looking at on the west side? On the east side, I got a lot more homes. Once you get past the deli, you're pretty much into housing there. And I can't see myself getting a sidewalk or anything up on that side. So I'm kind of on our strength as west side commercial, even though we do have commercial in different spots on that. Well, go ahead.
Well, I mean, if it is becoming a more, another center of town sort of, and more walkable, then it's better for businesses to have parking in the back, because if people are walking up the street, it's easier. So maybe that's something we can sort of promote. I don't know.
Well,
I
just
think
look
it
at
is becoming more walkable.
there's some design, and this lends itself into what they came up with, is the movement of just front yard setback for a minimum to force buildings up
exactly.
to that, and I just wanted to,
Yeah.
I mean, I think even more than just moving it up, I think it's, the thing I like about this report, which didn't quite make it into the code exactly, is that there's a lot of visual elements in this report about, and I think it's better to look at it sort of as a whole, not just take individual elements, but the idea is to create a set of conditions which includes putting in the appropriate infrastructure, which in some cases the community needs to do up front. I agree with Adele. It's something that the village, for instance, should do, is put in water and sewer, and probably also put in sidewalks as needed. But the idea is to bring the buildings forward, but also consider all of the other issues, like Rich is saying, bringing cars through a limited number of curb cuts into the rear, so that you don't have the same kind of situation you have on Upper Main Street, where you have curb cut after curb cut after curb cut, which really impacts the flow of traffic as well as sort of the aesthetic issues, and also makes it harder for people to walk down the sidewalks. So all of that together, I think, helps drive this kind of thing. And we'll see, we haven't actually had any applications submitted yet to the planning board since this went into effect. And so we'll see,
well, you have a brand new open lot.
I know, and I don't know what the property owner has planned and, what his constraints are.
Oh, it's a viable spot.
Oh, sure.
I think the other important thing that comes into that is that we look at parking differently now than we did 2 years ago. We have a set of parking guidelines in our zoning, but that's what they are, they're guidelines. We can take a look at an application and decide based on that application, are these parking, what can we do with the parking? Do we need to adhere strictly to guidelines, or is there some other thing to look at here? So we're not marching lockstep as we once did in terms of parking, which I think frees us up to come up with a better plan. It also makes us a planning board as opposed to a compliance board. We're actually able to do some planning here with that. But there are certain uses that don't have the same parking requirements, but would fall under the same parking requirements as others.
So if we had all parking in back of the buildings and connectivity between them, It would be much more flexible.
Much more flexible.
Well, I think we miss out on a lot of great things because of parking requirements in the village personally. Movie theater.
Well, I think,
Not to name names. but-
That wasn't, right, that wasn't the only.
Well, I know. I'm just saying. I mean, I think, you know, the village is walkable, and we need to, you know, it's like, I always compare it to like, I know it's such a bad comparison, but it's New York City. No one opens a restaurant in New York City and says, well, you have to have parking for 50 cars. You know, and the village to me is New York City of, you know, if a town is New York State, the village is New York City. You see what I'm saying?
The village doesn't have a
This is my
subway
thing.
system.
yeah,
But we have, you know, it's so small. I don't know. I mean, you would never drive from Jack's to Maggie's.
gotta-
You know, I don't
gotta
know.
get
We just
there.
have to think of it in a different way. That's all.
I think sometimes you gotta get there to start.
Yeah,
That's one of the
exactly.
problems. You can leave your car and you can do a lot of walking, but you
Yeah.
gotta leave your car someplace.
Yeah.
Can I get a request, one of those things, parking guidelines? We're still lockstep into 50 square feet, office space requires 6 spots, you know.
I mean,
We're no longer lockstep into that.
we didn't actually
Yeah,
change
that's
what we changed was a little bit of language that allows us to have discretion. So we didn't change the table so much.
Yeah.
It says, that table still exists and we can
We
utilize it.
just called it guidelines instead of rules.
If we need the table,
Right,
it's
we
there.
basically took out the word shall
Yeah.
in certain
That's cool,
places
yeah.
and then allowed, and the language allows us to have the conditions. I don't know, I think it's like 21242C or something like that in our code. But yeah, we can certainly
great.
send it to you, but that, yeah,
Yeah, well, it's,
but it took a long time to get there.
well, I don't wanna reinvent the wheel if, we got something in place on that. And, you know, that's one of the things that, we're trying to look at. One of the other things I just put out on it is, I think, we have, the ability of our email spreader or whatever it's called, Explorer, that you can get copies of the, our agendas and minutes, automatically. We don't have to do anything about that. But we can get, if village wants to get off with a little bit more paperwork, we can put your names on the, list, you get it, you can look at it, what we've done, what our minutes are, and the things like that, so just to keep you up to date on what we're doing. Because I think that's, communication back and forth is necessary going forward on it. It's that projects may not be on the border that you have to notify you, but they may be, you know, close enough to it that it has some impact or some notification on it. So, and if you're over buried on it, you just hit delete. Haven't done anything on that one.
Yeah, I'd like to be on the village mailing list. Do that.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
I have a question.
E-code?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the town is in the code.
Oh, so
So-
you can subscribe,
So
is
you
that
can
what
look
you
at,
do?
No, that's where the
This
municipal
has-
code
Oh,
comes
the
from.
code, gotcha.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very useful. I've used that for my thing.
Yeah.
I have a question for somebody from the village. Do you expect that there'll be some long-term parking areas in this developed area where people who, instead of going into the core of the village, if they know they're going to be there for 10 hours, and then maybe we could have some appropriate signage in the core directing individuals to long-term parking, because I know that a lot of people downtown get very frustrated. They want to come and do hiking and shopping
Right.
and dinner, and things take a lot longer than 2 hours or 4 hours.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see some more areas where visitors and residents can park their car for 8 hours or 10 hours. A lot of business owners are frustrated that people go down to the city and leave their car in front of a business for a whole weekend.
Right.
And I feel that it's kind of a lose-lose situation, because we're not really pointing out more long-term options to these people, and unless, they really do research, they don't know where they can leave their car. So I'd like to see some more long-term parking in this plan, and also some signage in the core of the village that we already have our businesses, directing people to long-term, and we can encourage people in that way to walk, especially if there are sidewalks, to take their bikes. On top of the fact that we're getting all these new bike paths and footpaths over the bridge, and soon we're going to be able to walk our dogs over the bridge and right to the dog park. And I love the idea of it all being connected together, the village to the town, and adding to recreational opportunities for residents and for, day trippers.
Yeah, no, it's a good idea. Yeah, we have very limited long-term parking in the village. That's municipal parking.
But I think that would help our existing businesses a lot.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think
Because
a
it's
good
really a
idea.
problem.
Yeah, whether it's necessarily advantageous to do it out here, that's an interesting idea. I've never heard anybody suggest that. It's a good idea.
The thing is that we have very limited land to dedicate towards long-term parking. And the land that we did have, for example, at the water treatment plant,
Right.
which we encourage business owners, get your employees to park there.
But we're waiting for them to stripe it and put lights there, because a lot of business employees, people want to encourage people, but when they come very early in the morning, I talked to David for a long time about this in the bakery, encouraging the people that come to open the shop early in the morning to put their cars over there so they're not congesting it for customers.
Yeah.
Because we need customers to park near
Yeah,
businesses.
no, that is a place where my understanding is, you're right. They are, I don't know where the village board is in terms of completing what you mentioned, striping and lighting.
But I think that's an excellent use of that area, doing longer-term parking.
Yeah,
But we
and
need
it
to-
is, certainly.
But we need to let people know that it's
Right.
there. Nobody really knows.
Right. Yeah, we do need that, which raises the issue of having like certain kinds of signage, centralized signage around parking lots. And some of it is, you'll find on the weekends that when the town is busy, people will fill up the Plattekill parking lot. And even though there's a very large sign there, I think it's pretty large, that indicates there's additional parking 400 feet up the street, the village parking lot is empty on the weekends.
I know everybody's
And-
really frustrated about that.
And it's not like there isn't parking, there's 100 and some spaces there, and people don't use it.
I don't know if this is a planning issue so much. I mean, this, a signage issue, yeah.
Oh,
But, I mean, I know it's.
but it's also just kind of getting people accustomed. I mean,
Yeah,
you say it's kind of like New
definitely,
York
but-
City and people walk, but people
Yeah.
won't actually walk that extra 400 feet.
Yeah.
Because it sort of feels like you're leaving the downtown. I think if we ever develop that strip along Plattekill, and, if the pit ever gets developed, that mindset will change too.
Well, what about doing some kind of a multi-level parking lot behind Starbucks in that parking lot there,
Well, there's some good suggestions, but I think from our capability on the board,
Yeah.
So I was just addressing the long-term parking, that was my question. Thank you.
yeah.
Thanks, Amy, I'll bring it
I did, before we go off the parking topic, when you had mentioned that CVS over there, at the intersection of 299 and North Putt,
Right.
and that you had allowed them to bring the building back, but still no parking in the front. The one pause I have to that, having parking in the rear is a wonderful idea for a number of reasons, with the exception of handicap parking. I firmly believe that the handicap parking should be as close to whatever entrance there is. I've become much more aware of that, having to drive my, she's going to kill me for 87-year-old mother to doctor's appointments. She has a rollator, which allows her to walk faster than I can, and she can zip around with that thing, but she still is very limited mobility, and if she had to park in the rear, she'd have to use that rollator halfway to the front door to sit down and take a rest, and I think that handicap parking should still be taken into account and allowed to be in the front if need be.
Well, I don't think it needs to be in front necessarily, it just needs to be near any.
Closer.
Businesses can have
entrance with
A rear entrance.
Yes.
You know, there's a public entrance, it doesn't have to be just service.
Exactly.
And if you allow any parking in front, then it sort of defeats the purpose of bringing things forward. I mean,
But
I
a lot
realize
of-
what you're saying, but there's other ways to deal with it.
Yeah, they're keeping, what I'm kind of thinking in terms of a lot of these large national stores have a cookie cutter footprint of what they normally use. So to ask them to change that can sometimes be difficult. And-
Most times.
But that's what we want to try to do, though.
Right.
Yes, and I encourage that, but I'm just saying that if I would encourage that, but wherever the door is, please allow the handicap to be as close as possible instead of out.
But if,
That's part of it.
Yeah.
if New Paltz has some policies, then if they want to come here, they have to conform to our policies.
I'm sorry.
If New Paltz has some set policies about parking in the back and having a front, not visual appearance in the front, then that's our policy, and if they want to do business here, that's what they'll do.
The problem is more a lack of firm policy, and they can just as easily go to the next town, look right over the line and do whatever they want, you know, so. And for example, the Lowe's, we still affects our businesses, it still affects our traffic, you know, but we lost the taxes, you know. I think we need to figure out a way to I think it's really downsizing the big box store to something that's more neighborhood friendly. As long as you have a large store, it only fits a certain way, you know, like they only have a certain model. And if you could get them to downsize somewhat.
Oh, I'm not arguing that point at all. I'm just saying that that's something that I think we still need to keep in mind when we're making these requirements. I'm all for keeping the parking in the rear and stuff like that, with the idea that we have to make sure that the big box stores, whatever brand they are or whatever they're selling, does want the business enough to want to make a change so that the entrance or an entrance would be there for the handicapped.
We did try to get the CVS to have an entrance in the back. That was shot down, but we tried.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah. And they are still having spots in the front, so hopefully those will be the handicap spots. Hoping. Yeah, there's no reason it shouldn't be.
Well, it would be.
Yeah.
Mike, I just wanted,
Yeah.
a few months ago, I went to a workshop in Sullivan County by a planner who's, some of you may know, his name is Randall Arendt, A-R-E-N-D-T, and he's currently working on just these kinds of issues, and he has a lot of written material about how to help communities improve their downtowns by still encouraging businesses to come in, some of them, national chains type stores, but to fit in with the model that you want in your community and to deal with parking issues through siting, through landscaping, and so forth. And it's impressive what you can do in your community if you set the right kind of tone. And so there is model language for different kinds of stuff. There's lots of visual tools that he has available. So I can make sure that you all get some information
I'd like to
about
see
it. All right, so
We generally, makes it simpler for it. If you got something, you send it to Kelly.
yeah,
And,
so we'll do that.
anytime people want to hear me something, I hand it to Kelly anyway.
So I just wanted, can we talk a little bit about the new bridge? Because that's going to be village and town, right? We're going from the village into the town on that bridge, and there's a lot of input from the community, but I'm wondering if the two planning boards want to weigh in on what they think they'd like to say.
There is Dennis Doyle has a committee that, community committee, that met once, and they'll meet again, I'll get it wrong, I think it's in the first week in April. They meet here. They've gone over what they thought up front, and it was in the paper, what they basically covered at that. I wasn't able to stay for the full meeting, I'm not on the committee, I just sit in the back and listen, but I think it's open on it. I think if there are definite viewpoints of what they want to be looking for, they're open, they hope to finalize the design by, finalize the conceptual design by June or July this year, with the idea of building it next year. They'll build a temporary bridge that will be to the north of the existing bridge. And then the question is, what do you want the new bridge to look like? And what do you want to do with the rail trail and bike trail?
So is that going to come to us at all in any way?
No,
No.
it would not normally come, we
We have
wouldn't
to
take
put those
it at all.
meetings if we want to.
But it doesn't prevent us from discussing that and submitting comments to that. Like I said, we do have people from the town and village on that committee, and so...
I think they meet during the day.
Yeah, they usually meet during the day, that makes
Hard,
it,
I know.
but I think we could put it on the agenda as a discussion point, what they're up to, where they're at. I can get that information for us. But the question is, I think what they left was, do you want a second bridge for pedestrians and bicycle? Because they'll have footings in for that temporary bridge. And they could, create a separate one from the existing bridge.
Is that paid for by the state, or is that paid for by us?
The county.
County?
Yeah, it's something that comes out of the town per se, because it's a state road.
Right, but I mean even the second bridge.
The second bridge, they got a budget line. If they can do it, they can do it within a budget line. That's what they're talking about. The question is not so much building the bridge, is the maintenance and upkeep of the bridge, and who falls responsibility for that. I think that's what they got.
Whose bridge is it?
Yeah, but that's the other thing that leads us into the biking through the community. Before the town board, we have 3 projects that all have something to do with the bike pedestrian way and surround the village. One of the plans on the bikeway is that town lawyer will build out to basically 299. DOT will build from 299 into New Paltz. I mean, that's over the thruway. So that impacts our 2 projects. CVS is one of the projects, and the other project, I can't think of it. Water park. So if it goes in front of that, or not in front of that, but where the DOT does. Second part of that is coming out of the village, and that's with a pedestrian over the bridge, and then bike path out to Walk Hill, and then there's talk of from open space of a bike path on the property they just secured out towards Butterville. So I think it comes back to and another push for a grant on Henry W. Du Bois to build a bike lane.
There's a grant for that?
Going for it again. I think they got turned down the first time.
Yeah.
Retry it.
Good.
So I think getting to that tie-in between them all is before us. And when you're looking at applications, to the extent that it touches any of those things, like we're making CVS. I don't know what they're going to do exactly, but you better leave me enough room that it doesn't impact anything that DOT intends to do right around Pike Corners, because it does go up that way towards. And they've given us easement on their site that any bike path along North Putt will have enough room for a bike and pedestrian path, whatever they determine they're gonna build. It's 6 foot, 10 foot wide, and they run out of, they have a lot of room by 299, DOT or county, but as you get closer to Fryhopper, you get less and less. So they're giving us sufficient room on their property to allow that to continue whatever the,
So the county's driving a lot of this. And has anybody put together a map of the whole area that would show existing and proposed bike paths and lanes so that we could, as planning boards, kind of use that as a tool and see what the overall finished thing might look like?
I think the Transportation Committee did a conceptual one. What I'll try to do out of the Bike Ped Committee is get any updates that they have on the maps, and then we'll get that one around to everybody.
That would be
And
great.
then hold on to those things that go forward on it. But I think just knowing that, and if you're looking at any applications that have any impact on that. The town is, what it's worth, or any new subdivisions are requiring sidewalk easements for it. And we've requested them all over the town. Some may never, a lot of them may never exist, but if there's we're looking for easements in any subdivision that we do now to allow for continuation of sidewalk. With the idea that if the town ever creates a sidewalk district, then they'll have easements in various properties on it. So we're trying to get to that stage too. So we've asked for sidewalk easements on North Ohio Road, and a few other 2-lot subdivisions that were way out. And then even on Henry W. Du Bois, there are sidewalk easements for it, down towards Glenn's property. So if you get any requests for any development on Du Bois, keep in mind that it's a major thoroughfare for use of the bike path. Now my illustrious town board members arrived. One of the questions we got on, Jeff, is the status of the joint comprehensive plan, opportunities for joint planning board committee to provide input. Where are we, where do you see going, and what role can this group of Brain Trust help out on that?
Where are we is that the town and village at their last joint meeting agreed to jointly hire a new planner, because the planner for the village is moving back to her hometown. And
Savannah.
thank you, to Georgia.
She's the worst.
She's staying on the consultant until they hire someone, or not. I'm sorry, so what we're going to do is the new planner coming in. I interviewed, we had 2 interviews last week. There's one more interview that I don't believe has been scheduled yet. And then the plan is the planner will then be giving time to the joint master plan, for which the town will pay for the amount of time that's put into it. Beyond that, I cannot honestly tell you. I like the recommendation. I've actually spoken to Mike Zeeler, I remember which one. Not you, Mike. I've spoken to you too, Mike.
Yeah, I know.
I've spoken to both the Mikes. And I think a recommendation coming from the planning board or planning boards on how they could work with the planner and be a highly functional group to assist us in the master plan would probably be a great idea, and particularly if both the planning boards thought they had some members that were very interested in it, be in a heavily working group, because it can be a lot of work in it. I think maybe you probably went through a master plan here. Weren't you part of the last one?
No.
You weren't, that was after you? Okay. So there's a lot that goes into them, and if you only have one individual working on it, not a corporation, it will take a lot of work. So that's where it would be for the planning board, anyone on the planning board, I think that would be good. So maybe Maurice and Mike, if you guys want to talk with your boards and see if the working group would also send a letter. Mike, if you send a letter to us
Yeah,
with a plan, maybe both come up with a plan and a suggestion for working groups. Because it's going to need a lot of manpower, so.
Jeff, last time you did it, I was sort of involved in, everybody spent like 90% of the time on the historical documentation, and there was very little planning. And it was very disappointing.
The best parts of the plan for the town one, and Lyle, actually, I remember being out at Bosse's with you when we met up there one time on it. Some of the best parts of it were the mapping, the ideas of where all of the development spots are. We identified, like you've seen, I think you were at a couple of those too. There was the maps with the dots on it. And we had literally hundreds of people. We got back hundreds of pieces of mail also on some community surveys on where the development should be. 32 north, 32 south, 208 north, 208 south, Ohioville corners, north putt, south putt. Those were all identified as areas for development. And we should really be taking a hard look at that again. The 32 north corridor definitely should be a corridor we need to really look at. And, I'd like to get, there's an applicant that we increase the amount of time on their application. It would like to be annexed into the village. But, I'd like that's what was the name? Remember the name?
I feel like we were talking about it last time.
Cusimano?
Thank you, Casano, thank you, Casano. And, it's something we'd have to go to public hearing on also, but I'd like to hear from the boards. Is this where we want to see that type of development, where is that where density would fit in well? Does the wetlands match up with that area? Is there sensitive areas in there? Tributary 13 goes down through there. So there's lots of issues and opportunities there. So I think even right away there's a piece. But you're absolutely right, Lyle, there was a lot of time spent on history, and then when you read the document that was never adopted by the board, it actually turned into a lot of inaccurate information. A lot of it got lost, unfortunately,
I
somewhere.
mean, I thought that, they had a couple of activities where people came and looked at maps and we talked about it in small groups and sent in information, and I thought that was very helpful, but I feel like getting the past right isn't near as important as getting the future right. And it just felt like that we were really dragging down there.
And I know that was the goal of the board back then, was to get through the master plan and then get on to a piece. And Mike, you and I have been talking about this for how long? Standards of design. And what are we looking for to look? And we're still not there. And that is a big, big piece of the element. And that is the next step after you are completed with your master plan. And it'd be nice to be there sooner than later. I think I answered all four of your questions. Did I?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think we could look at jointly and work on, but the issues we have in zoning that we come up with every time we sit down and do an application, restrictions that we have. I mean, our zoning code is somewhat out of date. We have uses that define what the meanings are and things like that. Motels, hotels. What are they? Are they really that separate? Are they different? So I think one of the things that we can look at is a use table. We can do our building inspector with that. But some of the issues that we have restricting us in zoning, or issues that come up every time in our own zoning codes, are things that we could help with going forward. From my point of view, is there'll always be the debate of whether you want to develop here or there, and what areas should be. But I think if our goal is pedestrian-friendly bicycle communities with adequate parking or knowledge of adequate parking, what are we looking for building-wise? I think there's some overall concepts on your B3 is kinds of thing we want to talk about, but how do we take that from a conceptual stage or a visual down into code?
You know, that's, I thought, what we had here. We had the PDF of the draft that came from BN. And then I just got the local law, which I can send you a copy of if you haven't gotten it. I haven't yet seen how this translates to this. I want to do that so I can see what parts were kept and what parts were not. Because there's a lot in here, as Michael said before, there's a lot in here that's really great, aside from the pictures, which are very informative and I think very useful for code. And I was sorry to hear that they weren't adopted as part of the law, because that would have made things a lot easier. That this, if it looks like this, we're okay. If it looks like this, go back to the drawing board. But anyhow, this what I want to do is try to take some sort of a computer word processing thing to compare the language in each, to see what the differences are before I either myself or to ask somebody else to pour through it to say what survived and what was changed. But I think that's the answer that we have for now, at least.
Mm-hmm.
What law exists now based on this document? The other thing I don't know is that the cover sheet for this document, Mike, says draft. I have never seen one that didn't say draft, and I'm trying to find one. You haven't seen it.
I don't, yeah.
Sometimes they never get to that stage.
It might exist, yeah. But apparently the draft was submitted to the village, and they adopted some version of it as local law. And I'm trying to connect the pieces to see where that is. I don't have it yet.
We gotta, just background-wise, must be hundreds of years ago. We did have, I was on a board, and we did have, I don't know if you remember, Saratoga Associates came in and did an analysis and came up with a lot of suggestions, and all the ones that we've seen was what they did, bring everything up front, make it more walkable community. When we approved the last town master plan back in mid-90s, he never adopted any of the zoning code that was recommended in it. It's always been the issue, and it's a hard issue to get from a comprehensive master plan to a zoning code. So I think from our standpoint, what we're trying to do on a town planning board is we're setting aside one meeting a month. We meet twice a month. One meeting a month to go over some of these things that, rather than review applicants, go over some of the issues that we're dealing with to come up with that. But I think, you know, between Maurice and I, we can come up with some ideas. We'll float them around to everybody of how we can assist on the comprehensive plan. My favorite, I agree with Maurice, is how do we take whatever comes out into zoning code, and where we have, first thing is, where do we have issues with our zoning code? Maybe we'll narrow that one down for another day. But some of the things that we have, if we want to, you know, strive for certain design concepts, what do we got to do to our zoning code to get to those concepts?
Is there ever a discussion of a joint zoning code?
I don't think we'll get there.
You just
No, we
asked
had
me.
it. Yeah. We had a meeting on joint zoning code.
We did?
True, we did.
Oh! I
Didn't
was-
go anywhere.
That was when he had all the 11, 15 different committees.
Yes.
All saying, where can you join certain joint services? What could you do if we consolidated? That was the language at that time.
Is that the same as?
That was a
as-
consolidated study?
We looked at
No, it was just, we took a look and said, what if we took the zoning and made one zoning out of it? How does the village code line up with the town code?
Yeah, we looked at, just looked at codes. Again, we'd end up with different districts. I mean, how many commercial
I hate
districts
it.
do you have? We only have one. How many, you had a number. We have
Three.
Three. So there were differences, and, does water and sewer exist or doesn't exist? And where were they similar, where were they different? I mean, going up Main Street out to the Thruway, unless you had a sign, unless you see the sign, you don't know where the village and towns are separate. So shouldn't they have similar codes
You would
back and forth? Because it's, and what difference? We never got any further than that. It kind of beat it out on that one, but, he's right, we did look at, you're right, Rich, we did look at it. But I think all we want to do now is just take a look at our codes now and from design concepts, and we can give you plenty of design concepts and talk about it, and that's, I think is going to be one of the hardest parts. But I think there's other things in the comprehensive plan that we want to be involved with or have discussions and give input to. But I'll put that out as take it back to individual boards and let's, talk about it. And I think the first step is where can we input?
How about conforming signage? Because town has different signage laws in the village. I mean, you can tell the difference if you drive down Main Street from town to the village. It's just a totally different.
Our signs are much nicer.
No, ours.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I have a real concern about signage that comes from our neighboring town. Highway is beginning to look a little bit like the Vegas Strip when you go down 299, doesn't it?
Oh, my goodness.
Have you noticed the new
Well,
signs?
that one guy.
There's now two.
Oh, now there's
They
two.
are multiplying.
Well, looking at the neon signage, the lights, the movie lights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, Mike, if I could, and I'm glad that Peter brought that up, because that is the example, is it took about 3 or so years for the sign law. That actually was born out of the planning board, and it took a separate committee, we had a sign committee, and we brought about the standardized signs in New Paltz, the backlit, how they're lit, when they're lit, the size of them, the percentage. It took about 3 years, but it is doable. So if you take another piece that you think is something that's really outstanding, you can do it. And mentioning Lloyd, they're actually looking at a moratorium on signs right now. They may have actually passed it. I know it was mentioned about a month ago or two, and I think it was the one, Adele, you mentioned. I think it was because of, or maybe the bright one.
Yes.
The automotive place. I think
Yes,
that
oh
was
my
because-
God.
There's now two of those,
But, yeah, I think that is the example, though, is that we can change
I'll
something.
just put it this way, they're right. If you look at our signing, it probably doesn't deal with digital signs. And, we never thought of those. There were signs that painted, the guy came in, through the artwork and things like that. Digital signs with flashing messages, you won't find any of that in our sign.
That's,
Actually, we do, Mike, because of the colors.
I
It
did-
would be-
Tell it, we have to get it, yeah, right?
I did have one comment about that. We could have all the rules and regulations regarding signage, but if these things are not being enforced, then it doesn't really mean anything. I mean, I know in the village, for example, I believe that we're not supposed to have any neon signs. And we do have neon signs. And, I mean, I'm not, one way or another way with it. I don't want to really see any really big ones, but there are plenty of neon signs if you go up and down.
Where are
and
the
look in
neon
the
signs?
village establishments.
In windows? That's legal. apparently.
Inside the window's legal, but outside it's not.
Just your main sign, I think. But you can
We're
have
not
an
supposed to
open
have
sign.
signboards either, but we do. People use them every day, up and down the streets. So there are a lot of things that are being enforced.
You mean the sandwich boards?
Yeah,
Sandwich signs, yeah.
Well,
Right.
those are picked up daily by our building department. There's a collection inside the building department of the ones that they
Really?
pick- Yeah,
because I see them every day.
they have an unlimited supply of them. apparently.
So if you need anything. Enforcement's always an issue on it, with codes, and Jeff mentioned signs. I was in the beginning of that discussion, and that went on for years, and we had a lot of people for both sides of it. It's an important thing, but eventually we packed out a truce and a 5-year grandfathering in to get the signs in and things of that sort. But it tells you can work it, it's not gonna be easy. But those are the things we can talk about. I think there are some things that are commonality between us. Sandra, one, code, what's allowed, what's not allowed, parking in the front, parking in the back, how do we make that, how do we keep that? I'll take Main Street because that's the one you can blend in together after the thruway to the bridge. How do we make that consistent across it? So an application comes before either of us, they're looking at the same, whatever conditions we're putting on there, that they're not different. And that as new things come about, we bring them into a new set of code conditions on it. And continue what we, code that we've had in for 20 or 30 years. So those are areas I think there's possibilities. That doesn't mean we have to jointly meet on that. We can have the discussions and exchange communication back and forth. Maurice and I can, more than happy to work together on it, but we'll think about it. But those are the kinds of things I think are doable on it.
The other thing we can do, Michael, is if you've got a project that's within so many feet of our village line, that you refer to us for an opinion, and we could do the same.
Well, I think that's part of, I don't know about so many feet, but it is part of the 239M referral that if a project in one municipality abuts, but maybe we can even.
Well, that's what I would say. We may, the requirement is if you borderline, you send it to the other municipality. But I think things on Main Street and 32 North, we should just exchange as a routine. We will copy you on anything that we get on Main Street and on 32 North. So you're aware of it, and if you have comments on it, you can send them in. I'll call them the interested agencies on that. So,
We should do that, yeah.
I think,
Most recently, we did have Alfondra's place was on the border, and we allowed him to bring his building forward in order to be more in conformance with the streetscape. So, I guess that's what we're looking for from you guys.
Yeah.
Is stretch a little bit so it blends in. You don't have that sharp division.
Oh, that's good.
And he's a good example of parking in your rear, by the way. As is the Medusa building in the village, 2 doors, 3 doors. Yeah.
right.
He's not a good example for signs.
I was just about to say that.
He's got one good star and one bad star.
Signs. Yeah.
While we're talking about him, I think he's a very good example of an eclectic type of building.
That's one way to put it.
He's
Which building we're talking about?
Alfondre. I'm talking about Alfondre, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Talking about you.
And what concerns me about design standards is somebody like Rick to come forward with a building that is so far in the future, past any other building I really have seen in New Paltz, that I don't want any design standards to get in the way of something like that. Because I just think that's an incredible example in our community, our village, and our town of something that can move forward 100 years, which is different than any other building I can think of.
Well, we just approved 2 new buildings in the downtown area. One was for the Yannis and one's for the, is it Rock and Snow, we're going to call it? Or Rock and Snow?
Yeah,
Annex. It couldn't be 2 more different designs.
So, but how would that fit into a design standard? Would they normally pass if you had the standard?
When we talk about design standards, as opposed to architectural review, design standards are parking in the back, treescapes, walkable, it's a code requirement in the town now for bike racks. Anybody comes in and has to have a bike rack in. So that's different than design standards like Alfondre's building is parking in the
architectural.
back, bike racks, but not an architectural review of what the building would look like, or not to that effect. So I think,
Yeah, but, you know, in addition to that, he's not quite off the grid, but he has solar panels that sort of,
oh, the building is
it's really.
leads, whatever you want to talk about.
It's a real example for everybody else.
You know, he's not, he's beyond silver on that building efficiency.
It's just about off the grid.
But, yeah, I think these guys have more of an architectural review. In your, no, not in the code?
No,
Oh, okay.
no, we have the Historic Preservation Commission ability to impact certain,
Existing?
Only in that district.
only
Yeah.
within that district or around landmark buildings.
Yeah.
We don't have an architectural.
But we don't have an architectural review board, and we don't have,
That's the nexus of the design standards that we're trying to work on, to be able to give the code more teeth, so that we don't have to impose another board on an applicant, another month or two process.
Right.
right.
That's great.
The other two things, well, we touched on design standards. The Greenway has design standards that the county's working on, and hopefully be able to share with the towns and villages that aren't part of the Greenway. But they'll have more information on that. It follows in with the county plan, what they have, but hopefully before the year is out, we'll be able to see them. But it'll be similar to what you've done for B3. It's that kind of overall concept. Follows a lot of the same thing on it, going forward on it. So I think in the future, we're looking at those things from a design standard, how do we incorporate that in a comprehensive plan and incorporate that, the hard part, into code going forward on it. The other one, Tom was there, Maurice and I were there, we were into a stormwater, stormwater for planners, subject over in Dutchess County last week. We're both MS4, the town and the village are MS4, so certain requirements that are associated with it. It was interesting. Gave me a lot of information, turned it around rather quickly. I'll share that with the board at our next meeting on it and give them the information that we received.
What's that, federal requirement?
It has to do with density.
Oh,
The more, I'll put it this way, the more blacktop you got, the quicker you get into being MS4.
okay.
And I guess we reached that limit, at least the town, recently, so we've looked into it. But it's a use of rain gardens, it's use of permeable pavers and things of that sort. But, just thinking forward is, since we're both in there, that might be an area that we could talk together again and get some code out together again of things that we could, because, well, we are MS4, we have to handle this. These are some of the things that we're going to impose on sites. So it's something that can go back and forth on the discussion jointly going forward on it.
Yeah, we had a client a few years ago, Nicholas Podiatry, and we went to great lengths to get his rain garden and everything in the back. And 2 times, and it never made it because there wasn't enough rain, there wasn't enough water accumulating in his rain garden to keep it going. So rain gardens aren't the solution to everything. The rain is intermittent, and we need a different kind of solution, I think.
Well, it's supposed to mitigate a good deal of the runoff.
But if you have a period without enough runoff, you lose it.
You have a period without it?
Well, this year, yeah, the snow garden.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, obviously, August, September, October,
Yeah,
it's
there are
very dry.
solutions. It doesn't have to be a garden necessarily, but it's something to keep it out of the stream.
While we're on the same subject, the DEC came out with a list of invasive species that should not be in anybody's landscape plans. But I was also told there are native invasive species, which, again, I'm not in the landscape at all, so I'm not beyond that. Best I can tell you, if it's purple loosestrife, you shouldn't have it in your plan. But I'm just, that's come out, so looking at landscaping plans, I'll get that list of things that should not be in anybody's landscaping plans going forward on it. And some of them are things that we grow now that you can pick up at Lowe's or some garden centers.
Right.
And that you don't know of, but it just, yeah, I don't know, I wrap it off on it.
Did the stormwater training have anything that would be useful with LP builders? Also, very interesting. We have this huge drama with 208, their huge stormwater situation. I don't know, just wondering. I guess we can talk about this next time when we
We'll
talk.
talk about that. I have to think, but actually, you guys should get a copy of it. It's a two-lot subdivision.
Pretty fascinating.
Right across from
Yeah.
Hawk Drive and 208, next to the VFW Hall, the little house,
It's right off of their line, it's right over your line.
Yeah.
lot next to it.
So going north of VFW?
Going south, yeah.
Just by
I mean, you come out Hawk Drive
Yeah,
and
about
fair left.
Cedar Ridge.
Cedar Ridge, is that the road? Yeah.
Yeah. We can get a look at it. But we can talk about that. No, I don't think we ever covered anything on that. That would be after before that. There's another issue on that whole thing, but it's beside the point. One thing on there is training. Is there, would there, and think of it, it's not something that we require right now, but possibility of doing joint training. I know Dennis, Ulster County tries to put on one or two sessions up in Ulster community each year, and he was searching for topics for something in April, but I haven't seen anything or heard anything on it. But is there something that would be apropos to us that might be useful to get somebody in and do a joint training session and get some credits and think about it, think what we may want to listen to or get information on. I mean, it could be as simple as the new seeker forms and what goes on with the project that's commonality. It could be infrastructure. We do have an engineer that's familiar with the entire system. We could go in further and talk about that. But anyway, I think there's possibilities for joint training. It doesn't necessarily mean we'll have to hike up or do something up in the community or drive over to Millbrook or some place like that. But, and again, it gets into, everybody's got the requirements for 4 hours a year. If we can do something here for all of us, or maybe even if we get the ZBA involved too, we can put together a sizable class. That would make sense for that. Suggestions, maybe something in the fall might be possible on it. And we can reach out to the various agencies. I think one we went to was Cornell Cooperative Extension, and heck, we could use the Cornell Cooperative Extension here. I mean, I tell you the truth, anytime I get a site plan and they show me landscaping, I have not a clue.
I was going to do it.
I have not a clue. I couldn't tell you one tree or anything else. We did have on our board a while, Lynn Bowery was on, and she knew plants, okay? So I kind of like, if she said it was okay, I was fine with it, but I know nothing when I look at them. I don't know how big they're gonna grow, what they look like, and something else like that. So I'm never really given a good review when they show me the landscape. And,
As long
I
as,
don't know how anybody else is.
as long as they're not on the DEC, let us know.
Invasive species, and you're okay with it. But, you know, we've had some ideas like that before, but it could be one. But I'm just throwing out ideas. I don't have any burning idea of any one or the other that we should have, but there's possibility on it. Is there anything else? I do want to think about the, you know, advantages, disadvantages of meeting, and when and what should trigger a meeting between the village and the town planning boards. You know, obviously the major projects in town or village, you know, we're interested parties on it, we can address it that way. But I think somewhere along the line, the zoning codes and working on it, a Main Street zoning code, has some joint possibilities back and forth on it. There isn't anything quote unquote different along Main Street between the village and the town. So what you allow, but what you allow or what we allow should be somewhat similar, you know? It shouldn't be that, I know things like gas stations and distances and we're at the stage that we can't get another, there won't be another gas station in New Paltz on Main Street, ever. Because our code says you gotta be a half a mile away from the nearest gas station.
is that right?
Yeah, we found that out when somebody was proposing one and found out, oh, wait a minute, that's the code, says you gotta be half a mile away. But there may be things in that. I just think that if we're gonna look at revising code, we should, one of the things we should look at is making Main Street somewhat uniform. And we could, you know, that was one of the things that we, probably the only beneficial thing that we did at that meeting, yeah. But it may be something to look at, and I'll take a look at the village, you take a look at the town, we can exchange some ideas and see what.
Mike, what do you remember about what Dennis said about the transportation hub, whatever that's called?
Transportation hub, the town, the transportation hub, Dennis has been looking at sites for the bus terminal. The existing terminal, where it is now, is a lease the Trailways has with the owner of the property. There are questions about trying to make a left-hand turn at 4 o'clock with a big bus onto Main Street, and they've been sitting there for a while. And so they're looking at other sites in the town. And interestingly enough, SDS, that just burned down, was one of the sites they were looking at. They were looking at the pit. There's another site that we're looking at. There's 3 or 4 of them there. I'm not sure exactly where they're at going forward on that, but looking at, you know, the issues and limitations of the existing bus terminal, and is there a better location for?
Right, but was there any update as to what?
I haven't heard any updates since that time.
Looking for that, right? Didn't get much.
Right, so that's still in the works, and that may go either way, you know. Now with SDS out of there. I mean, great for the buses, but it's further from the college.
The village just built a new sort of, it's not a bus station, but it's a better hub. You know, it's a better parking and loading zone on the east side of 32. And so once people start to use that, I think fewer people will walk down the village. I mean, because the trailways and everybody is pulling through there.
Right, it was,
So,
routes go through
you
the
know,
college.
It's possible it may take a while to catch on.
You know, it's convenient to the dorms, but it's not convenient to the students that live off campus.
Yeah, no, exactly.
What are you talking about?
If you're out by the college on the east side of 32, as he said, there's a large parking lot now that's just past the apartment complex.
Okay.
And the buses will pull, turn left across the traffic and go in, drop off, and then loop back around and then head to the normal station. And again, it's really convenient for the kids that live there in the dorms, but not for the kids who live off campus.
Well, yeah, well, the flip side is, if they looked at something like where they are now, or on 32 North, as the bus terminal, and the college is the second terminal, and the parking lot is the third terminal. Again, I don't know where they're going, I'm not involved with it, I'm just throwing out.
Well, the
what they're looking
college
at.
sponsors the loop, and wherever they have the bus station, they could just include that in the loop.
Yeah, yeah, and the loop is always looking at where the stops are, where the number of people riding it, and how much time it is. We had a lengthy discussion about that when we dealt with the Park Point on the bus loop on that. That's another thing.
Where it's going.
In court. Still in court. We'll be on that one. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
One significant, or perhaps one difference administratively between these two boards is that the village planning board takes public comment at every meeting, and the town planning board does not. It only allows comment during specified public hearings. Is that?
No,
That's
Yeah, and as far as the town takes public comment, generally at the beginning of the meeting.
I reversed it, you're right, it's the town that takes it. I don't know, I apologize. Is that something that you might consider discussing, whether the difference should remain, or whether you should take a joint strategy on that?
No.
the village doesn't have public-
And, from my standpoint on public comment, it does give people an opportunity that if an application is not at a public hearing stage or doesn't get a public hearing, they can voice their comments on it. I always say 75% of our meetings have no public comment, and 25% have lengthy public comment on it, but it does give an opportunity for it. Usually they're dealing with applications rather than anything else on it.
Wait, the village doesn't have any public comment except for public hearings? The village planning board?
Planning board.
Yeah.
There is informal, there isn't anything structured like to have a public comment on issues other than public hearings. There isn't anything structured like that, no.
Why not?
Well, the flip side, like I said, 75%, we
Yeah,
don't
but
have any.
still.
But
Why not have
if there's
opportunity
informal
for the
public
public?
comment, if there's informal public, I don't kind of
You
dialogue.
can join the village planning board and,
I can't, I live in the town.
oh, so that's why not?
Oh, voiceless. Understandable.
I have found it frustrating that the village has no
That the
public
planning board doesn't?
Yes, I did come before them once with something that I presented and they discussed, and I wasn't allowed to speak. And then when it got discussed all wrong, but I wasn't allowed to speak. I found that, frustrating, so, I don't
Well,
know.
that reminds
Public
me of-
comments would be nice.
Yeah, I have a question about our,
Yeah, I think it's defended, but there are two sides of that. Generally, when you allow public comment, but when the applicant comes before the board, the applicant and the board discuss the project, and I never want to get into a dialogue with the audience on the application.
No, but a public comment, I think public comment is always beneficial, and it makes the people feel that they're being heard, and that's why the planning board is there for the people of the village.
The planning board isn't there to have people be heard. That's not the purpose of it, really. I think it's valuable to have some voice for people who want to say something about it, but not necessarily at a planning board meeting. If it's a public hearing, then they can talk about the application.
But not every application has a
But-
public hearing.
Not each application is a public hearing.
It's true.
Well, it's not a requirement on the town board, on the zoning code, to have a public hearing for a site plan. I don't know what the village requires a public hearing on a site plan.
Public hearing on a site plan.
Subdivisions, we require public hearings.
Yeah.
I think everybody does that.
Site plans, if they are, let's see, site plans would require public hearings.
Some communities have it. Maybe that's why we have the public comment, is our site plan do not require public hearings, per se.
What is the village's relationship to, what do you guys have an ENCB or, like, okay.
Yeah, different names.
Yeah, okay. Well, I've been frustrated at our meetings where, to me, I think of the ENCB as a board that advises us, and it seems that they should be allowed to talk to us, they're not public members of the public, they're an advisory board. But I know that we have been prohibited from speaking to them during applications. I can't remember when this happened. I got very mad. So, yeah, I don't know. I wanted to revise our policy on that if we could. I don't see why this board that's, supposed to be advising us shouldn't be speaking to us during application review about applications.
Village's current version of the environmental board operates very differently than the way the towns does, or the way the village is used to. So it's not really a good comparison. They don't have as much to do with the planning board. They're focusing on different environmental issues, and they're very project directed.
Okay, so if you have a project with a lot of environmental impacts, you don't send it to them for review?
No, we don't. We haven't.
They get
They get
everything.
Okay, so they
Everything
could
that we get,
comment.
they get.
Yeah,
Yes.
but they don't typically. But when I was on the town environmental commission years ago, we had a very strong relationship with the planning board, where we reviewed a lot of applications, and we gave a lot of feedback. And I don't recall ever having a problem interfacing with the planning board. We weren't treated like public.
Okay,
We were.
all right, good to know.
The relationship was, this is an advisory body
Yeah.
who has expertise in environmental issues, and and here's their feedback on.
But I think you're right,
Yeah.
Levesta, in that I think environmental boards should get everything the planning board members get. And the board, or the board chair, there should be some voice to the planning board to say what they think about this.
Yeah, well, we
If they have
get
any
reports from
concerns
them
about it.
on projects, and they do get things, but I think sometimes if they come to a meeting, it would just be nice to have more communication. That's it.
Do you have a liaison? for
No, that would be
going back
great.
to- Because we had a plan, when I
Yeah,
was on
we've
this
talked
one,
about
we had a
that.
planning board liaison come to our meetings, and we had
Yeah.
an environmental commission member who came to planning board meetings,
That used to be me, but,
and there was that conduit.
It gets to it.
No, I know,
Yeah, I
it's a
know, yeah.
commitment, it's
Yeah.
hard.
and
but-
also the ENCB is very small. I think, I don't know, maybe they're huge, but I when I was going to the meetings, it was very small. But, it's a very valuable group, so,
How do you utilize it better than it is now? You're right, they get everything we get, they do comment and report back if they're gonna have any comments at their meeting. They meet monthly, so sometimes things get out of sequence on it. But I would go along with, have to think about whether I allow comment in from
yeah.
board members on other things.
I mean, it comes up so infrequently, but I feel
Yeah.
like when it does,
I think it would be helpful if the environmental board, or whatever it's called, issues a report that gets sent to the planning board as an official document, and that becomes part of the
well, that's what
evaluation
happens,
process.
yeah. But I guess
So
my
then-
question is, okay, I remember one application, I think it was Park Point, but I can't remember, where I had a question that I felt that someone on the ENCB, who was sitting right there, could answer. but I was not allowed to ask them so they could answer that question, and I don't see why
Pass
not.
them a note.
Maybe I could have gone up and whispered in their ear, but yeah, that's it.
I see.
That sets, the reason probably was, sets a precedent that you're having a discussion with the public.
Yeah, but they're not the public. Yeah, I got it.
They would have to preface everything
Yeah,
here, and then
exactly.
we just draw it out on it. I can.
I guess I just see it like they're here to assist us, so let's let them. There we are.
And you didn't know ahead of time that you would necessarily
I didn't
want to...
know I was going to have that question.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, if you know ahead of time, you could, of course,
Yeah,
invite him to the
exactly.
table. But then it's a question of, can you do that in the middle of the meeting?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Anybody have anything else they want to discuss? I'll keep everybody up, or out, but I think what we'll do is.
The only question I have is, what can we do to knock down the movie marquee at the Stop and Shop? I think it's one of the ugliest things.
Knock down the movie theater and let it take care of the market.
All right, so on that note, I think there's value here. I think Maurice and I will go over the minutes of what we have and send out what we think are some of the issues that we have, and try to get some feedback from you about where you want to take it and what you want to do. I think there's a couple of high priority ones, especially with the comprehensive plan coming up that we can do some work on. And it may not need 12 members to sit at a meeting on it, but it may need a couple from each to kind of meet on a basis and talk about it. But so it doesn't, and then bring it back to individual committees. But I'd like to see this thing going forward.
Yeah, it'd be great. The way that I had, one way that I had envisioned the joint comprehensive plan process going was that the planner would guide us through some of the elements that we might not be unclear about, but that the entire planning boards would weigh in on all of it, would have a real impact on it, and then, of course, the legislative bodies would have to turn it into law. But I didn't expect the subcommittee of our planning board to work on anything. I expected the whole planning board to do it. This was something that affects us deeply for a long time. I mean, the last time we did this was what year?
Successfully? 94, 95?
94, right, so 20 years. And now, one would hope that it would be done more frequently than that, but one can see that it doesn't necessarily. And so these are far-reaching decisions that are made, and I'd like us to really consider them as a whole body, so that we make sure that we get many different viewpoints out there and become something that we can live with and does good for our communities.
Well, I think that's, Jeff, I think one of the things we came up with definitely when you select a planner, I think it's, I contact Maurice, because it's turn to host. We have to go out on a Tuesday night, folks. I know.
Host here?
You can have it here. Well, I don't know. This thing is looks out.
You know, the problem with our meetings is that we don't have workshop meetings. Any meeting is an action meeting, so we can have public hearings on both meetings of the month. And to know months in advance that we're not going to have one doesn't happen, because applications come in, they get delayed and so on, so that's a problem. So I think this, if my fellow board members would be comfortable doing it on, where's the third Monday?
Fourth Monday.
Fourth Monday. Then I think this might be better for us. I don't know how often you have it, but
One of the things we used to do, applications twice a month, there, all the board members know that, and, we're not exactly swamped. We got some big ones, but we're not, many. And that's why I pushed this year, because back in my youth, we used to do workshops on the second time. Been here a lot.
Yeah, we're not swamped usually anyway.
Yeah,
There are times we are. There are times when an applicant comes in, and if we were to have only one action meeting a month, and then it had to be referred to the county,
oh, yeah.
and it could just take much longer than it really should. So we're trying to streamline things so that applications can get done as quickly as possible for everybody's benefit.
Well, from our board perspective, meeting the fourth Monday here is not a problem.
All right,
They're supposed to be here anyway.
let's keep that as at least an option.
But whatever plan you select, one of the things, and fourth meeting of the month, to sit down with the planner, and we'll meet again, to go over it. But let Maurice and I take a look at what we've accomplished here or said here, and work up a little itemized things, get them out to you, and let's rearrange them and then see how we tackle each one of them. I think there's merit here. And to the extent that we get into zoning and it is meaningful to get the ZBA involved, we could do that too.
Good. No, you didn't have any cupcakes or anything.
If Augusta has some leftovers, once in a while, we can get something on
I
it.
used to bring
And it's like, it's sucked down in about 30 seconds.
Leftover chocolate.
I used to bring mess ups.
But
Yeah.
before Easter, you're not getting leftovers, right now, so.
And I think just as one more announcement, if anyone's interested also, is this Wednesday in this very room, we're going to be, sent out letters to everyone that lives in Water District 3 and proposed Water District 3, which is out by the Plesser property, and also proposed Water District 5, which will be the one coming off Dave Rohr's property by the rural cemetery. And so that went out to all the residents of Plains Road, Schwanberg View, Cedar, and the roads along starting from the village for the proposed water for the DEP shutdown. So that would have impact on zoning, because once you provide municipal water, you then can change density, because now you're providing a service. So if any of you are interested and want to come, we're going to have an information session. It'll be here this Wednesday at 7:30.
So that's at the same time as the village board meeting?
It's because of the deadline, we're looking at now, we're down to 21 months until the DEP turns off the faucet. So it's a very aggressive schedule. It's been sitting on the docket for many, many years, and it's coming to fruition. So it's a very quick docket for them. We'd like to come and get information. We're going to collect the information too. We'll have the DEP will be there along with engineers, and I'll be there and everyone else. So it's an invitation to everyone to come here and get information or share information.
The next meeting of the Bridge Committee,
That will be April 8th.
8th.
It'll be 1 o'clock in this room. The only feedback I got is there was some request that maybe those meetings get moved a little bit later, but there was a request at the meeting, Mike was at it also, that actually get moved earlier. So that was a single request. I don't know if we'll be doing that again, I prefer later. But there will be information sessions set up. There are several people interested in having information sessions on it. And those will be hosted by Dennis. He is the chairman of it, and he is the direct liaison to the county's office on it. And that's for the bridge. Again, that is a very, very quick schedule. We'll have the temporary bridge up next year and the permanent bridge up the following year.
Are there more meetings planned after the April one?
Again, it's going to be very, very quick though as far as community input. They're asking us to be closed in June or July because they need to go to bid sooner than later. The nice part of it is, and where we're going to want input also, is it will change the character of several of the village neighborhoods potentially, is keeping, if the community wants it, is keeping the footings and everything in place for the temporary bridge and putting a walking pedestrian deck on that, and then designing access to that. And I know, like I mean, I talked about it, and Amy's talked about it for way too long, is, you know, can we design a walkway that goes along the river and connect to better parking? Could there be parking then put to the north?
That'd be great.
And that's,
Well, that idea actually includes all kinds of decking that would cover the whole bank of the river, where people could walk and stroll down there. We could have a whole kind of get out of your car, and this is like where you're going to be in New Paltz, and then from there you can take your bikes and hook into the rail trail, or go back up the mountain, or come back the other way. And it was just kind of an idea of a destination, like if you go down to the city and you're on the West Side Highway and you see to the right, everybody's out with their kids and their strollers and their skateboards, and people are playing chess at little tables, and there's picnic tables, and it's just a lot of action. It's really wonderful down by the river, and we should
The
be
problem is
using
that
it.
it would have to be relatively high.
Yep.
The river floods clear
Well,
up those apartments.
I mean,
and
honestly,
From the bridge to sewage plant, there's a dip in there that would be very, very expensive to build.
You can't use it all every day. I mean, if it's a flood, you get free pumpkins, and that's it.
we're not going to be able to use it during flood
Well,
season.
it's not just use of it, it's how expensive it would be to construct it. in
Or
areas
wash
where-
away.
Where the bank is gonna be eaten away, you know?
Well, this is
so
a,
anyway, this is the good point, and again, April 8th is that meeting, that's at 1 o'clock, but there will be community info session. Dennis Doyle said he's more than happy to come down. Dennis will come down for the meeting.
That's an interesting concept, they're utilizing the parking lot and being able to get the people.
well, that was part of the
down,
idea, to make the parking lot there mean something.
To get them to Main Street
Going there, yes.
successfully.
Correct, and this is not something that really anybody expects the town to pay for. This is something that we might be able to get from the state or from the county, and there are people in the county interested in this idea.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. Yep. Once again, I want to thank you all for coming. And we'll work together and get back, looking for feedback on how we can do better on the meeting and where we want to go jointly forward on it. I think there's a number of areas that we can discuss that have mutual benefits. So,
Thanks.
thanks.
Thank you much. Chocolate.